lost 90 pounds in less than a year. You want to know how? I know it sounds like I'm bragging, but it all comes down to simple habits. Don't you hate when you can't seem to break through that bad habit? I don't just mean the obvious ones like substance abuse or violence. I mean fear and procrastination. I mean sleeping in a little bit too long or watching too much TV, maybe doom scrolling. I know it's ironic this is on social media. So I want to ask you, are you ready to ditch the bad habits? Are you ready for the good habits to finally stick? Are you ready to build habits and patterns that could change your life forever? Because it's totally possible, but it all starts with being aware of your patterns. I have another video on my channel here that talks about patterns, and I would highly recommend that you go check it out. But real quickly, there's 3 skills that you need for success in any area of life. The first is pattern recognition. You need to be able to recognize the pattern. The second is pattern utilization. You got to start to use the pattern that you've recognized. And the third is pattern creation. And that's where true mastery kicks in, because you start to create your own patterns. So what the heck does that have to do with breaking habits or making good ones stick? Well, recognizing your patterns is the first key to changing behavior. And I want you to remember this. All behavior is driven by the desire to solve a problem, because that's how our brain works. Our brains are problem-solving machines, and a habit is just a simple and reliable way to continue to solve a problem in our environment. So you notice something good and you want it, or you experience some pain and you want to relieve it and you want to avoid that in the future. So for example, when I was overweight, I had a real problem. I felt uncomfortable. I didn't like the way I looked. I couldn't play with my kids without getting totally winded. I was experiencing pain and I wanted to get rid of it. So I want to ask you, how about you? Do you procrastinate? Do you know what to do, but you don't always do what you know? Do you need to make that post on social media? Do you need to knock on that door? Do you need to make that cold call? Do you find yourself procrastinating on things that you know that you should be doing? So how do you break out of it? Well, it's actually pretty simple. You use the urge to avoid pain and the urge to gain pleasure to your advantage. So James Clear has a book called Atomic Habits, and Charles Duhigg has a book called The Power of Habit. And they both talk about this system called the habit loop. And I think this is the perfect illustration of how you can use pain and pleasure to replace a destructive pattern or habit with a constructive pattern or habit. So Clear talks about the 4 laws of behavior change, and this is how you create a good habit. The first law is make it obvious. This is the cue for the behavior. This is why I said it's so important for you to be able to recognize the patterns. That's the first step, because you have to know what's happening to actually do anything about it, right? The first law for my health journey was that I had to put my workout equipment in a totally obvious place where I would see it no matter what. This made the cue unavoidable. So what does that look like for you? What do you need to put in place so that your cues or triggers are totally obvious? Maybe you need to print out a flyer or sticky notes or something and put them all over the house that has a Nike mantra on it, right? Or just do it. To make it obvious, make it totally obvious and kind of in your face. So the second law is to make it attractive. This is the craving that initiates that behavior. So the way that I did that was to imagine being able to chase my 2-year-old around the house without getting winded. And this was really attractive to me because I wanted to connect with my son, and I felt really bad that I wasn't able to connect with him. So maybe for you, you could get a picture of your dream home or dream vacation, put it up on the wall so that the habit of following through is attractive to you. That's why vision boards can be really powerful for people. It depends on the type of person, but those can be really powerful. And the third law is make it easy. This is the response for the craving to actually start taking the action. So for my health journey, I set everything up the night before so that when I got up in the morning and it was time to work out, it was easy. I didn't have to put in all that effort to actually perform the action. It was all set up. It was all ready to go. I didn't have to worry about it. It was easy. So maybe for your cold calls or team meetings, you build a routine or a script. It makes it so easy to follow through. it would feel kind of stupid not to, right? So just make it easy on yourself. And that's the way that you can start to reinforce the habit. And the fourth law is make it satisfying. This is the reward for getting the behavior. This is critical to remember because sometimes the reward for something can feel kind of ambiguous, right? We think of all these things that we are being rewarded for. I want, this is my goal, right? But how clear is it really? The reward has to be really clear in our mind, or we're not going to continue the behavior. I get so many people that tell me that they're not very good at accomplishing their goals, when in reality they're just not very clear on their goals. Who wants to go through a bunch of pain for no reason, right? So you gotta have a clear goal. So for me, this is the satisfaction of following through. Plus, after a while, I felt really good after working out. My energy levels went up, and eventually I started to lose weight. For you, it may be the reward of, an interested prospect, or the reward of being a person of your word. It's so important to have a reward for that good habit. Otherwise, it's not going to keep going. And it goes in this loop, right? So you have cue, craving, response, reward. And once you get the reward, your brain says, oh, I got a reward for this. This is great. I want to do this again. And it starts the loop over. It's also really important to celebrate every single win you have. And I would say especially the small ones, because it's the small habits that, that build up to the really, really big results. So that's how you create a good habit. How do you break a bad one? Well, it's actually almost too simple. You just reverse or invert the laws of behavior change. So number one, instead of making it obvious, you make it invisible. Get rid of the cookies and the donuts. Maybe take social media off your phone so that you aren't tempted to doom scroll. Remove all the cues that may trigger that behavior. Number two, instead of making it attractive, make it unattractive. Imagine what the cookie is going to turn into when it goes into your body. Kind of picture that fat. Maybe think about all the opportunities you're going to miss out on because you're procrastinating. Number three, instead of making it easy, make it difficult. Maybe shop at a healthier store so that when you're tempted to eat sugar, it's kind of a pain to go get it, and maybe you won't follow through on that part of it, right? Set reminders and make commitments to other people. Create accountability so it's hard to go back on your word and not follow through. Make it to the point where it's actually harder to procrastinate than to follow through. One of the tricks I use, this is going to sound really funny, but one of the tricks I use is when I start to think, I'm going to do that later. I think, you know what? I'm going to think about procrastinating later. I'm going to go ahead and get this done, and then I'll go ahead and think about procrastinating after that. And it sounds so funny, but put off the procrastinating, right? Procrastinate on the procrastination. Sounds so funny, but if you can use that, it actually works. And then number four is, instead of making it satisfying, make it unsatisfying. Think about how sluggish and sick you're going to feel after eating that unhealthy food. Think about how terrible you're going to feel. You waste hours doing something that doesn't bring you closer to your goals. So that's how you build good habits and break bad ones. But I want you to remember this. You always have to have a constructive habit to replace the destructive one, or else it's going to create this void, and nature hates a void. And that's going to be just automatically filled with something else. So make sure that you have a constructive habit to insert in there once you remove the destructive one. The key here is to be intentional about your habits, about your life, about your business. And hey, if you're an ambitious realtor or you're a leader in real estate, I would love to connect with you about how some simple habit shifts can move mountains in your life, your business, your career, and your relationships. So just click the link in my bio, let's have a chat about it. So I would highly encourage you to audit your habits today, and I'll see you soon.